I'm your host, Matt Hodkinson, and on this episode of the Consultancy Edge, I'm joined by Danielle Heward, co-founder of Optimo, an operational improvement consultancy that helps purpose-led organisations run more efficient, human-friendly businesses. We dig into Danielle's journey from contractor to consultant, how she built Optimo around her own values and passion for environmental and social impact, and why that's shaped who they work with and how they show up. We also get into what she's seeing in the consultancy landscape right now, the reality of nervous buyers, how she's using LinkedIn and speaking to create opportunities, and her thoughtful, values-led approach to using AI and improving internal operations. It's a really honest, grounded conversation for any consultant trying to do meaningful work in a weird market. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Consultancy Edge. Danielle Heward, how are you today?
Hi, Matt. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. Great to have you with us. Thank you. Listen, first off, for those who won't have come across you as yet, who haven't had the vast pleasure, what do you do at Optimo?
So we are operational improvement consultants. So we do organizational efficiency through people, processes, technology, and information. So I sort of describe it in those two different ways because as we might come on to, the word operations means different things to different sort of clients in different industries. So operations is usually how we talk about it, but organizational efficiency we've found is a sort of label or a description that kind of lands well with some people. So,
And tell me about the kinds of clients you're working with. What are the challenges? What are the problems that they're facing day to day that kind of highlight them as needing what you've got to offer?
yeah, so generally speaking, it comes down to sort of time and money, which I think lots of things in life generally come down to, don't they? But I think the specific challenges obviously vary depending on the industry because we work across different industries. We kind of did that as a result of me following the end of my own nose in terms of what I was interested in largely, but also just to try and not have all of our eggs in one basket, I suppose. But originally, I built the consultancy services around what I was good at, basically. And they are those challenges that clients experience are sort of agnostic of industry in some ways. But what we cover, being the people, processes, and sort of tech and data, means that any client might have a sort of any variation of issues that might fall into one of those categories, but we kind of address them holistically, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what it comes down to is sort of operating model and are the various elements of your operating model working as effectively as they could be and sort of in harmony with one another, basically.
Fantastic. We can dive into the capabilities and that sort of operational design aspect in a bit, but I really want to dive into your journey. So if we cast our minds not that far back, I'm sure for you, but when you first got into the world of consultancy, what was your background? How did you decide that consultancy was the model for you?
Mm. So I actually grew up in consultancy. So I very early on started working in the internal operations function of a consultancy company. And the company that I was originally working for was bought by a big sort of consulting and business process outsourcing organization. And I, because of the change in my roles and the change that kind of changing company, I guess I was interested and distracted enough to stay there for so long that that just became like, a decade of my career history, basically. So I think consulting was sort of comfortable for me in terms of like a type of business or a business model that I knew I could turn my business into. Um, but I by default became like a project manager basically on the majority of consultancy assignments that I worked on in the past. And my limited company actually existed originally because I started operating as a contractor project manager. Um, and I was working on office IT infrastructure projects just before COVID. And then, of course, when COVID came along, nobody needed their offices anymore. So they didn't need my services anymore. So, but I think I had already had a bit of a taste of freedom at that point, like in the respect of being a contractor, kind of I decide whether when I take days off and all of that sort of stuff. Um, and so realized that like running my own business was totally what I was made to do. Like I was never very good at doing what other people told me to do anyway. So that was like the beginning of it really. And then I joined the NatWest Bank Business Accelerator program during lockdown. So they did like a virtual cohort through lockdown. Um, so I was on that. So I just sort of used that really to start from scratch and go, right, what am I going to do? Who do I want to work with? What am I good at? And sort of built what is now Optimo off of that really.
Fantastic. I mean, I think, and I've made that journey as well from contractor to consultancy. It's not the hugest leap, is it? It feels a little bit
No,
safe, but
yeah.
but of course it's not going into any business ourselves. So what were some of those early challenges when you're transitioning from a consultancy that's employing you, albeit as a contractor, into going it alone? What were some of the first things that hit you and perhaps were unexpected?
I think it's really difficult to say because obviously I was doing it during lockdown as well. So it's difficult to know like what was a normal challenge versus what was like a lockdown
Yeah.
aligned challenge. But I think the biggest thing for me was like the emotional roller coaster, I think, of just like what on earth am I like one minute I'm like, this is a great idea, and then the next minute I'm like, what am I doing? Just go and get a job. Which of course I couldn't because there weren't any because everybody was stuck at home. But um I basically, because I went through this process of being like, what do I actually want to do? Like, who do I actually want to work with? What do I care about? So I started with my own values. So like, what do I care about? What are the things that motivate me, and what is it that's actually going to make me enjoy what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? So I have always been personally quite interested in like environmental issues and have become more and more sort of passionate about that as I've kind of grown up.
Yeah.
Um, and I realized that there are loads of businesses, organizations out there that are doing really great things in terms of like climate action and solutions to like real world, like creating solutions to real world problems, but they don't always necessarily know how to run an effective and efficient operation, or they don't know how to manage change properly, or they don't know how to manage projects properly. So I thought, I can bring my skill set to those environments and to those companies so that they basically so that they can save us faster. Because if they're the ones with the solutions, then we need them to be efficient, right? So that was kind of my starting point. And in hindsight, like I made things really hard for myself, really, because I had no experience or connections or anything in the professional sustainability space. Um, so I literally had to start from scratch in terms of like learning about it, learning how to talk about it in a professional environment, going deeper into like some of the science, I suppose, between underneath climate issues. And just starting to try and build my network and demonstrate the knowledge that I had and how it was useful, I suppose, in those organizations.
There's a few things I want to unpack there. The first is the thread I really want to pull on is that idea of starting a consultancy with your uh, capabilities, but also what you want to be doing, what interests you, what really gets you
Mm.
excited. And I was having a conversation with my daughter, my 15-year-old, today about just that, because she's taken business studies as an option at school. She's a little bit disillusioned by it, and I'm really convinced that they're not focusing on the enthusiasm first about telling children, what is it that you are passionate about, what interests
Mm.
you, and building a business around that, because I think that's
Mm.
at the root of everything. And I'm sure there'll be people listening that really want to tap into that and need a bit of a reminder that what they got themselves into was born out of passion, of capability.
Mm.
So tell me a little bit more about that. What's it like, I guess, Danielle, is what I'm asking, to run a business that is born out of your passion? Is it, as they say, the saying goes, doesn't it? If you really love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah. Although there's some dangers in that when your tendencies are towards like workaholicism.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, it's great is the short answer. Like it's just the best thing in the world. I think in hindsight, I have always followed a path of like doing something that I have enjoyed and combining that with something that I'm good at. Like when I look back, some of the jobs that I stayed in the longest, so the consultancy company that I stayed with for 10 years, it was because I was never bored. It was always enjoyable. I was always confident that I was, doing the right thing in the right place and making a real difference. So it was health and social care consultancy that I did the majority of my consultancy career in. And I could always genuinely see or feel how the project that I was working on was going to make a difference to that hospital or to that NHS body or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
how that would actually genuinely impact, everyday people that needed those services. And I think that's one of the big things that kept me there for so long. And having done a couple of jobs since then where the purpose was less obvious, let's say, or the fulfillment was less obvious, I then recognized and now recognize that like that purpose and that meaning behind where I'm working and what I'm doing has always been a massive driver for the choices that I've made in terms of like career progression. So, and then I think with COVID, there was just so much spare time to sit around and like self-reflect and evaluate. And, with people dying and being unwell and the kind of scariness of all of that, I was just like, you know, why would I be doing anything other than something that I'm really fucking good at
Yeah.
and really enjoy? Like life's too short.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I think that is exactly the lesson I was kind of hoping for people to listen in on. And I think that does translate to the clients that you take on board, doesn't it? And I'm sure that, as with many consultancies, they may have seen, and I know over the course of the past couple of years, a lot of consultancies have seen dips in their ability to bring on new clients and what have you. But during those times where you do get to choose your clients, and when you have such a focus on that purpose and where you can really put your energy in a way that excites you, have you ever found it that you've really had to say no to a client because their values didn't align with yours, and you just saw that there were going to be too many red flags moving forward?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think I'm actually quite lucky in that because I defined those values so early on, I think the way that I talk about things and the sorts of things that I talk about, um, I think people self-select in or out to a certain extent. So I've not that I can remember, I've never had to say no to a company or to somebody because of a mismatch in values alignment, because I think like the right people, we just sort of find each other anyway.
It
And a massive
organically
part of,
happens.
yeah, and a massive part of the way that we do business is massively based on relationships anyway. So our it's probably the long game, but like most of the clients that we work with, we have some sort of relationship with them before we actually start working with them. Um, Sometimes alcohol may or may not be involved in building the relationship, um, but so yeah, I think, we only end up really in those sorts of conversations with people where there is that values alignment in the first place, because the conversations don't really go any further than one or two anyway, if it isn't there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we're probably quite lucky in that respect, but we tend to quite easily find people that have, social or environmental impacts at the heart of what they do, and they see the value that we can bring from an operational point of view.
I think it's good that that's obviously baked into. I talk a lot about positioning, of course. I think it's obvious that people see that in you, and that self-selection happens. I think that's a good lesson for anybody that hasn't really baked their values into their positioning, into the tone that they use when they're on LinkedIn and promoting themselves. And talking about that promotion, and you alluded to it just there, Danielle. You've done a lot of speaking. You go to events, and I know that you're always seem to be on a train somewhere or go to some sort of event, local or otherwise.
Definitely feels like that.
How is that? How is that factored into your new business strategy, your partnership strategy? What are some of the benefits that you see from being that visible? And also, I guess for those listening, did you have to push through that initial sort of inertia of putting yourself in front of people as well?
Yeah. So the other complication or difficulty was, again, in lockdown, events or, networking was all online. And to begin with, I really struggled to find sustainability focused, ready made sort of networks and forums. There were a few, but some of them were either, despite being online, they were either focused on a particular geography, which was nowhere near where I am in Leeds, um, or they just didn't exist actually. So it was really hard in terms of like building my online sort of LinkedIn network with people that were sort of in those spaces. And then the other thing that I then had to sort of contend with was once I decided that sustainability was the thing that they were the clients that I wanted to go after, the more I learned, I was like, what does that even mean? Like that means so many different things to so many different people. And so I was right back at the bottom of the ladder again, kind of going, oh God, where do I focus? Because there are so many industries that have some sort of environmental or social sort of focus. And this is where the following the end of my own nose thing came in again, because I was like, right, well, what am I actually interested in? So some of the markets that we work in now are just because I happen to have read something or spoken to somebody or connected something with something in my past where I've gone, that's really cool. Let me learn more about that sort of thing. So some of the events that we go to are more like industry specific events because that's where you can learn more about the particular subject matter. It's where most people that are, the sort of senior leaders of organizations, that's where they go. They don't really go to networking events. They'll go to like industry events. And to begin with, there's a couple of markets that I was like, I don't know anything about this industry. That no one's going to listen to me. Why are they going to care what I've got to say? Sort of thing. And obviously that's not true, which has become, more obvious in the last couple of years. But yeah, there was definitely like an imposter thing where I was just like, yeah, I'm really interested in this sector, but just because you're interested in it, that doesn't really give you any credibility to people that you're talking to, Yeah. So it has been a hard slog, I would say, to kind of find the right people to give us those opportunities so that we can then start to build credibility in those markets and get those case studies and be able to talk about them with confidence to people and things like that. So yeah, a lot of the events that we go to are industry specific, and I think our brand awareness, I think I sense is really good in a lot of those areas now.
Yeah.
So it's just that kind of continuing to build on that basically, and obviously, especially in the current economic climate, just kind of continuing to, put one foot in front of the other basically, and keep having those conversations and keep looking for those opportunities.
It's definitely about consistency, and what I hear there is as well. It's another lesson to fish where the fish are, to find those specific sort of niche events as well, so that that the vast majority, at least, of the people that you're speaking to are going to be interested. And I guess that's part of that credibility journey. But also, as you've rightly pointed out, I think it's a snowball effect with credibility through speaking, isn't it? In the early stages, on your first occasion, you've got nothing to rely on. You've never spoken to an audience before on this topic, but I think there are some really kind of small niche opportunities for those, and I'm speaking to those listeners really because I feel like you've got this mastered now. But just get out there, whether it's digital, whether it's their own webinars, whether it's just going live on LinkedIn or doing a pre-record video, and soon those opportunities will snowball into something bigger and find that platform for you. And while we talk about LinkedIn, we were talking about this, of course, before we started recording here, and just how prolific you are, and also really good, I have to say, at putting yourselves out there. And so talk to us about, because that's a very intentional strategy for you, isn't it? And you did say that you have won business from that kind of activity in the past. So what's your LinkedIn journey looked like to date?
First of all, thank you. I will take that compliment from you. So I think, again, it just comes down to lockdown. Like LinkedIn was the only way for me to try and find people that were in these industries that I had no experience and no connections in. So I guess like it probably could have been it probably would have been easier for me to decide that I was going to go and do consultancy in health and social care, because I probably could have reached out to people that I'd worked with before and just kind of, gone that route. Um, but LinkedIn became the place where I could figure out who was who. In once I'd kind of gone beyond sustainability and like, what does this actually mean? Then I could start to be really specific about the types of companies that I was looking for and who was in the leadership teams at those companies, and who did I know that I could perhaps create partnership opportunities with that were already working in that space, or they had connections in that space and maybe did something that was complementary or even completely different to what we did. So LinkedIn was like the place to be, basically, as far as I was concerned. And initially, like, the thought of posting on LinkedIn just made me want to run in the absolute opposite direction. Um, but I ended up doing a LinkedIn sort of sprint boot camp thing. I can't remember who ran it now, but they basically force you through like one activity a day for 5 days, where you absolutely have to like upload stuff, and including a video, and like, so I kind of did that and got over myself a little bit in terms of like those first steps. And then I started to connect with people that I was on LinkedIn, where I would have conversations with them. You'd have like a virtual coffee or whatever. And then some of those people became like friends, basically. So I ended up with like a network of people that I just genuinely enjoyed like interacting with. And, I would put something up and they would kind of comment on it and engage with it, and vice versa. Not like on purpose, but this just sort of happened organically. And I think because I'm quite, or at least try to be quite, just sort of honest and like don't overthink what I'm writing, what I'm posting too much or whatever. I'll just be like, here's a thing, or this is what I'm up to, or whatever. It just kind of became natural. And then we've definitely had a couple of like considerably sized projects as a result of people messaging me and being like, "Oh, I've been reading your posts on LinkedIn for a while, and actually, I think you might be able to help us with something." Some of them I already knew, um, and it's just about like reminding them that you're here and what you do, sort of thing.
Reignites that
Um,
awareness, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And some of them, um, I might not have even remembered I was connected with them, if I'm honest. They were just like, "Oh, I think you can help us with this thing." And I was like, "Yeah, cool." Um, so once I realized that people were actually reading what I was writing, which was quite nice, and that, I was obviously making enough sense for people to understand what we do and who we do it for, um, then it just kind of became one of those things where I was like, and I enjoy it. Like, I'm a bit of a LinkedIn sort of geek. I just love hanging out on LinkedIn and reading what people are up to and stuff like that. So it just again became a bit like, why would I not, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I guess that's a lesson in itself, because I've seen this when it comes to LinkedIn. When you do put yourself out there, you consistently share content. I think it helps when you are out and about visiting events and what have you. It gives you that opportunity to say, this is what I'm doing today, day in the life kind of posts and
Mm,
what have you. Probably, more selfies than most, but that's fine
yeah.
because we know what that does for the engagement. But it is engagement I want to talk about, because quite often people will be digesting your content. It goes in, it affects them in a positive way, but they don't even hit the thumbs up. They don't even
Hmm.
comment. They don't reshare. So I guess the lesson is, and one that I learned a while ago, is keep sharing without expectation. You will be making a difference. You will reach the right people, but the vast majority of them just aren't going to give you that feedback, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, again, like Vicky and I have had so many comments from people where they're like, "Oh, I love all your stuff on LinkedIn," and we're like, "Do you? I didn't even realize you used LinkedIn." So there's lots of like lurkers. But the other thing that engagement, like the algorithm changes all the time, doesn't it? So engagement is like one day I can post something and like it'll get 100 impressions and like 3 likes. And then another day I can post something and it'll have like thousands and thousands of impressions, and it just goes absolutely mad with, likes and comments and stuff. And I kind of haven't really figured out what the recipe is, but nor do I, like, it also doesn't really matter to me. But
Yeah.
one of the slight changes that I did make a few years ago was, as well as posting my own stuff, like rather than trying to use it as a platform just to share what I'm doing, but also to take time to go and engage with people's content where they're the sort of people that you want to be talking to, or and using Sales Navigator to create leads and stuff like that. But even without Sales Navigator, like if you're following the right people, it's also really helpful to go and engage with the stuff that they're saying, because they might not see something that you've posted, but you will at least have the opportunity to kind of remind them who you are and what you do, just by sort of, making comments on their posts and things. So again, like it's just kind of become a natural part of the way that one of the things that we do at Optimo. So
I think that's an important one as well. Just nuggets coming thick and fast at the moment, Danielle, from you. But it is about sometimes not just the content creation piece. For those that might be listening that are nervous about putting themselves out there, even if it is a picture of themselves, a video, then commenting on other people's posts and searching by topic and the kinds of themes and capabilities that you've got, target sectors, you can find those conversations and weigh in. And often they will be the most impactful. That's what's going to get you the reach. It's what's going to get you the eyeballs. It's what's going to position you as an expert. So that's a really good reminder, and perhaps that takes a bit of the pressure off being the content creator and all of that. I do want to kind of get your thoughts on the sector right now. So if we reflect on the world of consultancy right now, I think we've both alluded to, what has been a difficult time for the sector on the whole. And I think we're still a little bit, hopefully, coming out of the doldrums, but they're still there. What have been some of the observations you've made? What are some of the trends perhaps that you see in consultancy at the moment? What are you observing?
So, I mean, I think the world in general is a weird place at the moment, especially for businesses, especially for consultancy businesses. I think there's no getting away from the fact that AI is presenting a challenge for a lot of consulting companies, whether that's as competition or whether that's how you're using it for efficiencies within your own business. I think that's just one that we can't escape. I've noticed that potential clients or even existing clients are sort of I don't know, like nervous about making decisions, spending money, quite a lot of just faffing around going on. And then there's lots of like excuses. So it's, going to wait for, changing government, need to see what happens, or going to wait for the budget, need to see what happens, or, oh, it's Christmas, so we'll pick it up again in the new year or whatever. And I'm like, you need to, need to get on with some stuff at some point. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's just nervousness that I'm seeing anyway from clients, where the world is just chaos and it's kind of like, anything could happen. So people are just being really, really cautious about spending money. I think from our point of view as well, because of whilst what we do is obviously money saving, then I think, but a lot of clients are saying, if we're going to spend money on external support, we're going to start by spending money on things like marketing or business development support services so that we can generate more revenue. And then we'll look at, internal kind of money saving opportunities. I think specifically from an operational or like organizational efficiency point of view as well, in some of the industries that we work in, I think there's a bit of like, oh, how hard can it be? Like, we'll just make it up sort of thing. We'll figure it out, which is fine because again, like, you would only spend money on services that you're really going to see the value in. But I think this is where things like employee experience also start to come into it. So yes, we can help save you time and money, but also, are you running an organization that people really are gonna want to come and work for, and what's their experience going to be while they're there? Because actually some of the stuff that we do just makes people's lives easier at all levels of the organization. So I think depending on your sort of approach to culture and things like that, some of the more operational industries we work in, they're just like, we stick a guy in a van who goes out and does something and then comes back like it's fine. Or maybe like less, that's less of a focus for them sort of thing. rightly
Interesting.
or wrongly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it just really depends. But I think, yeah, at the highest level, the world is just chaos, which just makes everybody uncomfortable. And the thought of parting with money when you don't really know what's around the corner for yourself,
Yeah.
um, just makes it really hard to want to pay for consultancy services, I think.
And I think the things to reflect on, and we've seen the data. I mean, providers like Source Global, for example, have presented recently at the Consultancy Growth Network Summit, and they've been showing just, yes, so there is an amount of nervousness, but there's also money to spend, and buyers are
Mm,
willing to spend it with the right sort of decisions made. And there's always an element of risk, of course, when buying into consultancy, but I feel like one of the behaviors that's changed, not every consultancy can promise that financial outcome, whether there's going to be an upside or a cost saving, for example, and that you're able to quantify that number and measure it. But typically you're influencing those kinds of things. Buyers are looking for speed to outcome, but also a measurable outcome as well. Is that something you're able to do? You know, when you're looking at operational efficiencies, you're able to size up the opportunity and sell on that basis?
yeah, so efficiencies is something that we can measure in terms of whether that's like profit margin or a specific KPI or metric that a client is looking to improve. Staff engagement is another one.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we see, because part of what we do is around like the change management, a lot of it is less tangible, or certainly less tangible in a short period of time, because it's about the culture shift and about actually genuinely embedding new ways of working, which is why the relationship piece for us is so important in terms of building that rapport first. Because if we come in and kind of work with you for 6, 9, 12 months before you see like the shifts that you want to see, you have to really trust us that that's going to happen eventually, you know? So where it is a bit of a kind of longer game to play, and it is more kind of cultural shifts that they're looking to see, we need to know that they're going to trust us to kind of deliver that, you know? So, and that will only happen if they've got a really good understanding of what we do, and that we get along, honestly, because, you know, some of those difficult conversations are just made so much harder if you don't have that rapport in place in the first place. So, um, yeah, I think that's why that kind of early relationship building is so important for the work that we do. Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is so important. And also, I mean, I guess that's making the water a little bit muddier when we do discuss AI, and that people are looking for those sorts of efficiencies. It's maintaining that human connection, isn't it? And I know
Yeah.
a lot of people are relying on automation to make some of those cost savings and what have you. But I'm also seeing a bit of a backlash to AI as well. People
Mm,
calling out the very obvious AI content that they don't think sort of belongs on the social platforms and in our general awareness. If we turn an eye to the future, Danielle, I mean, you mentioned there the two faces of AI, really, about the competitive aspect, yes. When it comes to adoption in the world of consultancy, what are you changing about how you operate? What are your sort of future or predictions for the future, I guess, about how your consultancy is going to operate in the changing face of things?
yeah, so we're using it. We've written a like an AI usage policy, because we're also quite conscious of the environmental and ethical sort of implications of AI as well. Not to mention, obviously, you know, security issues and things like that. So we have been doing a lot of research to understand what's out there, but have been using it, I guess, in a kind of softly approach to begin with, because a lot of what we do, I think we like the fact that we have a way of doing things, and we don't necessarily just want to bring in, you know, AI to be like to undo the personality, I suppose, of what it is that we offer. But it is very difficult to ignore the efficiency gain benefits of using it for, you know, analysis or whatever.
Mm.
So we've just tried to be really careful about defining how and why we want to use it, and where our boundaries are in terms of what we will and won't use it for.
Yeah.
So if we can save, and we pass those efficiencies on to the customer as well. So if we can do something quicker, particularly in like the startup space or for social enterprises or charities where they don't have a massive budget anyway, then we'll say to them, look, we can do this with AI, which will be quicker, um, and therefore, it will make it more affordable for you. But yeah, I think we need to be careful with it, and I think we need to try to not be too lazy with it as well. Like,
Mm.
yes, if you could do something in 5 minutes instead of half an hour, then that's great. But if it's only going to take you half an hour, then, is it really worth it sort of thing?
Yeah.
But
And
we're
also, how's
on,
it impacting on the qualitative aspects as well, right? About what's it putting out?
yeah, exactly. So again, everything that we might use AI for, we obviously always check and sort of validate by one of us anyway. And it's just that I think the other thing is there are so many tools out there, it can be really tempting to be like, oh, let's have a go with this one because they're using that one and it looks really cool. And actually, it doesn't do half of the things that you need it to. And it does a load of stuff, that you don't need it to, sort of thing, which is the same with any tech, really. It's like figure out why you want to use it first and what is it you're actually trying to solve, and then figure out the best tool for it.
We've
Mm.
talked about your sustainability focus. You, of course, have been a B Corp for years now, right? How long has it been for you now? Three,
Um,
4 years?
so we set only two. So we
Oh, is it?
certified in August 2023. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um, it took us 18 months to get there though in the first place. 6 months of that was a waiting list because they were inundated with submissions for certification. But yeah, so it took us about 12 months to kind of get to the point that we were ready to submit everything.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, August 23 was when we were certified.
And that's a consideration when it comes to AI, right? Because I think a lot of people might be unaware of the energy usage that's behind the use of AI as well. So is that something that you've, as part of your policy, you've been investigating? Just what impact is it making on the planet and carbon emissions, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I say, considering why you want to use it and what you do want to use it for, and maybe what you shouldn't use it for, because there's going to be a trade-off because of the environmental impact of a prompt, for example.
Mm.
What is that versus could I actually have just done this if I'd have sat down for half an hour, and what does that look like, sort of thing. So it's definitely a massive consideration for us in terms of why we might or might not use AI.
There's an element to keeping the brain sharp as well, right? Because I think sometimes
Yeah,
we're just reliant. We'll tap in the most mundane of things that if we'd
yeah,
just given it a minute, we might
yeah,
have come to a better answer even.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. There is a version of ChatGPT called Green PT, I think, which was open, but you have to pay for it now. But
Right.
that is like a more environmentally friendly version of it, basically. So,
Interesting. Okay.
mhm.
Danielle, we've come to the part of the call where we talk about snog, marry, avoid. So
Okay.
you'll be pleased to know it's all business related.
Yes.
A snog is a quick win in business. What's one of the things that you were able to implement nice and quickly that's made a big difference to the way that you operate?
That's a really good question. It's obviously operationally focused.
Yes.
Um, um, so, oh gosh, I don't know what though, but basically we have all of we ran our own internal operations review basically. So, we automated quite a lot of our sort of sales and onboarding process,
Yeah.
which took out a lot of like admin time basically. So the relationship stuff up front is obviously um, all us, but then everything in terms of the process for onboarding a client, we automated through to like the finance function.
Okay.
Um, we weren't in a position to be able to pay for some of these like all singing, all dancing systems that do it all for you anyway. So we just sat and worked through using things like Zapier and stuff like that, where we could automate using the systems that we'd already got. We could kind of automate and create efficiencies through the sales process.
Great. That's the good one in operations or would it? What about something to marry would be a long term, can't live without it in the business. What's that look like for you?
would I be cheating if I said my wife, who is co-director of the business, can't obviously live without her?
I'm sure many will be able to use Vicky in that capacity, but we'll take that on board. Anything else?
I think just like the networks that are, from a personal point of view, the networks that I'm in, I get so much value from the people that you can just pick up and text or drop a LinkedIn message and just be like, am I going mad? Or, that sort of thing. So I think just that community.
That's great. I'm sure that's good for just maintaining your sanity a lot of the times and
Oh yeah.
make
I,
sure
I'm
you're
not
not
I don't know
hallucinating.
if I have that, but yes.
And something to avoid. What would you absolutely ditch that's not serving you in business on a day-to-day basis, do you think?
I think like being distracted or tempted by the shiny things, like making sure that I am sticking to my values and putting boundaries in place in terms of well-being as well. So I made a joke about it before, but like I really do have a tendency towards just like working all of the hours that God sends because like I enjoy it actually, but like my body and my brain don't. um, which has landed me in some not so fun sort of situations over the years. So yeah, I think just avoid distractions, avoid the noise, stick to what it is you're trying to do. That would be
Great
mine.
advice. Great advice. Danielle, I've really enjoyed our chat today. Where can people find out about you and where can they find about Optimo?
So LinkedIn, obviously. Danielle Heward on LinkedIn, and then our website is www.optimobusiness.co.uk.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being with us today and for dropping so many golden nuggets and lessons for us. And we'll see you real soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.